education, and real-world knowledge about the voiceover industry. It's the Voiceover Gurus Podcast.
So welcome back to another episode of the Voiceover Gurus Podcast. I'm Linda Bruno, and joining me today, the lovely Alyssa Jason.
Hello, everyone. So excited to be here for this.
Yes, we are doing a group little conference here today. There's a topic that I have been wanting to discuss on the podcast for a while now and finally found the perfect person to do it because mental health is so important for actors and for what we do on a day-to-day basis. So I would like to welcome Anna Hindell to the show.
Hi, Linda. Hi, Alyssa. It's really exciting to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is great because you mentioned you're a Gestalt psychotherapist. And you're right down the road from us. You're in New York City. We're on Long Island. And you also practice yoga and you teach yoga. And so you had mentioned in your email that you actually had some physical ways that actors could, use to try to help them ground themselves. But I guess just first off, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I'm a Gestalt psychotherapist and Iyengar yoga teacher. And both of those and so I have a private practice in New York City. And the way I work with people is a real body-mind somatic approach. So there's different approaches, and one is really just working with your thoughts and actions. And the approach I come with is really that your body is the house of your emotion. And it's really, we're getting information all the time. And so why not start to pay attention to it, right? We're often just identified from the neck up, what am I thinking? What am I doing? But I think particularly about actors who start doing the movement classes and learn how to work with their bodies as these instruments. And so to know yourself really well so that you can be clear about your intention, what you're trying to get across, what you're feeling, how to support yourself. All of those things are so important that our tools and ways of working, particularly with actors, that can lead to having a better way to support yourself to do this work and to last longer, right? I think about the amount of rejection that actors, voiceover people have to deal with on a regular basis.
Yes.
And how to build up the resilience, how to keep your eyes and intention clear on what you're doing so that you can keep moving forward, even if you get, 50 no's for every yes.
Right. I find that the biggest concern I feel is that people get rejected so much to the point that it just beats them down and then it affects everything. And then they either leave the business or in general just feel terrible, and it's just so important to be able to figure out, I guess, find some ways or some things to help because we can't avoid rejection. It's just part of our day-to-day life.
It is true. And I think that it's very hard to have the constant rejection. And so hopefully people get a win in there. You need a win sprinkled in there along the way to keep you going and to keep you optimistic. And maybe if it's not that paid win at the beginning, but, finding the wins with, other friends and creating your own things and remembering what you love and why you've chosen this path in the first place. That's great.
And I think related to what you were saying, Anna, the rejection eventually gets stored. And I'm always speaking about this, whether you're experiencing that rejection personally or it's showing up in your professional life, it does get processed through the body. So it's like this catch-22 that you're processing the rejection through your body, you're processing the emotion through your body, it's being stored somewhere. And now you have a block in what is your total instrument as an artist. That what you're using to bring to these auditions has this emotional block in it. So in essence, it's affecting your ability to book those jobs because you have this block in your body now that's been placed there from the constant rejection. So it is so important. I'm so excited that you're dealing with it on the body level, because these are our vessels as artists. These are our vessels.
Yes. And, one of the ways, there's many layers of the ways in which I work with people. And of course, you need to build the relationship first and foremost, whether an actor is going to any therapist, the relationship, all the studies come down to how that's most important versus offering a really particular technique or approach. But so once a trusting relationship is established, I think that I like to really start a lot of my sessions with body scans, and I do a few of these and demo a few different ways to do this on my website, which we can put in the show notes, annahindell.com. But it's really just can take a minute, 2 minutes to just feel your body from your feet progressively to the crown of the head, or the crown of the head down to your feet. Or if you're walking, you can kind of bring this in anyway. And this could happen to just feel, Alyssa, where you're talking about where a block might be. And I'm assuming a block is kind of, we all have that weak link of where we start to collect tension, or it could be, I have the stomach ache after I got the rejection, or the pain in the low back that keeps creeping up. We all have a little weak link, and instead of pathologizing it, just bringing your attention to that area, bringing some breath there to just start to create some space. And then you get to dealing with the feelings, which there's really no way around it. And the beauty is that feelings don't kill us, but they're just there to digest, to feel. I often think of them like food. We have to feel the hurt of, oh, I didn't get that job, and breathe into it and take care of ourselves in a way in which, so that it's not stuck, shoved, or pushed away, or we don't act it out in anger or some other way with the people we love at home, or some kind of self-sabotagey way.
Do you have any suggestions for anything that maybe we could do on a daily basis, just as a kind of like putting up that protective armor a little bit before you head out for your auditions for the day?
Absolutely. I think, we're not robots. We have a different living, breathing experience all the time. And I think taking that pause and checking in, what am I feeling in my body, and waking yourself up to yourself, whether that's through a body scan, whether that's through a little bit of movement. I'm kind of like swaying a little bit in my seat as we talk, because I'm just, I think about having this vessel of your body, and you have to know it really well and hopefully find that fluidity and movement in it. And if you're going, whether it's just getting up for your day and, putting on your human professional costume, so to speak, you want to feel good and feel supported. And that could be a body scan. That could be lying down on your back. That could be lying on your belly and starting to move around and roll around. And then also checking in with what you're feeling, but then also what message are you telling yourself? How are you talking to yourself? Because what we feel in our body is going to reflect how we speak to ourselves. I'm not going to get this job. Oh, okay. And as I say that, I feel a dropping in my chest. Okay, so I could keep going in that dropping of my chest, or I could try to sit upright and roll my shoulders back a little bit and open my chest from the center to the sides, not to force it, but just to encourage a little bit of change, a little bit of that mini transformation to get myself ready for the day. And
that's great.
How we hold ourselves is really going to affect how we feel and the messages we tell ourselves. So you
As you're
can kind of,
saying,
yeah, go ahead.
as you're saying all this, I'm just thinking specifically to our students who are voiceover actors. If you are carrying yourself like this, you're literally constricting the very instrument that we work with.
Mhm.
Like the voice is one of the first instruments or first sounds, first pieces of the personality that gets affected by emotion. So it's like, how, as you're saying this, if you open and you're just standing there, your instrument's going to be freer as well.
It seems so simple, but it is simple to do, but to remember to do it is the other part of it. I know that after doing this for so many years, and Anna, it's been like 30 years of auditioning. I'm exhausted. It's like my motivation that I had, and maybe it's because I've done a lot of work, I've got clients and everything, but there's some mornings I get up and I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to do this today, because it feels like this never ending sometimes, cycle of audition, don't hear anything, audition, don't hear anything. And then I wind up getting my affirmations from clients that will reach out, or I'll get booked off my demo. But that whole auditioning process is really a mental drain. And it happens, a lot of our students that are now regularly auditioning, that they come back to us to talk about it, they're in a tough spot, and I try to, what I do. And like you were talking about the statements that you say, I watch what I say to myself, because it's very easy to go down that road of like, I stink. Nobody likes me. I'm too old, or I'm out of date, or whatever. I'm not following the trends. But to be able to reaffirm and say, nope, stop, be quiet. We're going to start talking positively, and we're going to start reflecting and thinking about all the things that we do well to get us going. But it is difficult.
It's really difficult. And, you can think of it as creating new habits and then really kind of working those habits. Because it's interesting, even Linda, as I saw you, because we have video for the listeners, that, you said, oh, I wake up and you kind of leaned over and your shoulders went forward and your chest went back. And you said, I'm just no good today. And it was like, even in that moment, you made yourself smaller. And then you said, okay. And then you sat up straight and said, oh, I got to remember how I talk to myself. So I really work with these principles of awareness first, and then it's what we do with the awareness. So you might start to know that voice. That's that, calling it the self-sabotage voice. And in Gestalt, we might put that voice in the chair. And this is a real experiment that we'll do in the room. So, all right, we'll call the voice the critic. And then you speak from that voice. And usually there's a lot of energy and a lot of excitement, yet it's turned back on yourself. And then I have people switch and you'd be Linda. Okay, how do you feel about that voice talking to you? And then you get your opportunity and you get this dialogue going. And what usually reveals itself is the need underneath that critic. And what's that need there? And we all have a different story. And that's something really interesting to investigate, to look at, because we all do it. We all talk down to ourselves and have that critical voice that we all started for some reason. At some point, it was perhaps helpful. Maybe we thought it was motivating, or we thought it was going to get us off our butts and get us to go memorize those lines. But then when these voices become chronic, habitual, out of context and out of awareness, it's a real problem. Yeah. It's like, oh, I got the job. Oh, but there's that critic again. What's up with that? So I really start to work with people of like, wait, what's going on? What's the need? Why is that voice coming up now? And what is happening in the present moment? So I work with a lot of presence, and and that's a high pressured place for actors, right? Yeah. The present.
That's where we're working.
that's where you're working, and that's a place, it's where it's at, but it's also, there's a lot at stake, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, let's see. So awareness, presence, what to do with the presence. And then also, I think for actors, it's really important to get in touch with that core principle of why you're doing what you do.
I was just going to say, Anna, because I'll share this with the audience and on this call because it's appropriate. For me, therapy has always been part of my journey, not only as a human being, but also as an artist. To explore emotion and feelings only serves me because I can be more compassionate to the roles and other humans that I'm going to have to be embodying in some way. So for me in my early acting life, just that question you just asked, why am I doing this? Through therapy, I came to the realization that it was for validation. It was for love I never had somewhere else in my life. And therefore, I had set the stakes too high. My whole life depended, and my whole success depended on receiving this love, right? So it was almost like a it was like a prophecy I created. Of course, if I didn't believe I was worthy of it, I would never get to that place I thought I would receive all of it. And you don't realize that you have these programs running inside of all of this when you're getting the rejections, when you're not showing up for your auditions, when you're not putting the time in, when you're not doing all of your practices, there could be this subconscious program that's not allowing you to.
Interesting. Wow.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I think that, I'm giving all of these ways in which I work with actors and these different tools and approaches that could be useful, but sometimes, thinking about therapy as a journey and as a space to discharge and process the process you're going through as an actor, living that life. It's such a hustle. I can't even imagine that therapy can just be that 50 minutes a week to just let go, be yourself, and metabolize all of those feelings and digest them, so that it can also serve as a grounding while the rest of life can feel a little bit out of your control.
Yeah. Do you find any common element amongst the actors that you do work with, that they bring you? Any types of, just the most common thing that you see? I know everybody's unique, different, but
yeah, right. Well, I'm going to say the obvious, a lot of attention to how they look and a lot of attention to, kind of this. It's such a little trap, isn't it? Because there's ideas around what you want to look like and what's beautiful and what would be, quote, and I'm doing my air quotes, better. But then you walk into an audition and they want a different look.
Yeah.
So, I've seen extremes of that where people then get on a cycle of doing a bunch of things to manipulate the way their body looks in this service of trying to fit into a role, versus that going in and kind of mining the gems that you have inside. And I don't want to say one is better or worse, or, we all have our journey and we all have to figure out what we need to support ourselves. And I think that if you can find that, whatever that reason is that keeps you going, I'm going to, that's going to allow for more resiliency. That's going to keep you waking up. And when the rejection comes in,
you remind
you
yourself
can go back to that place. Exactly. You can go back to that grounding place.
How do you feel about social media?
Yeah, like what about it?
Well, for in the voiceover world, the communities, it's all thing. Everybody has to have their own social media channels, right? But then they get on there and they brag. I just booked this. I just booked that.
Yeah,
And the thing is, the majority of their followers are other actors, and so it just leads to that feeling of, oh God, they booked that. I didn't
know. I remember I used to joke that, Facebook has sort of had its heyday, but I used to joke like 8 or 9 years ago, Facebook keeps me in business because people like do the whole compare despair.
Yes.
I go online, I'm trying to like put myself out there, but I'm seeing this this snapshot of another person doing their thing, and I'm comparing myself and then putting myself into despair.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be hard. I think
if I could get off social media, I would.
Yeah,
honestly.
I think that social media can, if you're working it to serve as a strategic getting yourself out there, and it's challenging yourself that way, or you have a real vision, I think that it's good to be really clear about what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And then try to leave the rest and not get caught up in it, because it's not, I think of it, if you're doing it for marketing, it's another tool.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what ends up happening is people start kind of hanging around on social media when they don't know what else, I need a little brain break, and I need to just kind of, I don't quite want to do something, but I don't, and then they just see how seemingly fabulous everyone else is, and it just brings them down. And I think that particularly with actors, it's like what I said before of like, you got to sprinkle in those wins,
right?
And you got to kind of, actor or not, we want to keep moving toward where things are warm and things are open and things are welcoming. And if when you look at social media, you're just going, oh God,
yeah,
everyone, that's easy to just tear yourself down, then it might be, let me try to market myself a different way. Let me try to be creative and have old school human contact.
That's always what my advice is also when I have actors that, are talking about social media, and I'm always like, well, let's reframe it. How do you use this tool? If you're using it for just posting your wins, or if you're just using it for self-promotion, then you're going to fall into that trap. But if you actually look at it as well, I can actually use this same very tool to create content in which I'm expressing my actor or expressing my artist in whatever way, and use it as an active creative tool versus this passive tool. Because it can be a form of expression if you use it actively versus passively. And I think most of us, because our brains have become so wired to doom scroll and just fill time, we've become so passive with it that we feel like the only time we have something to share is if we got some sort of validation, and then we share it.
Right.
Instead of like actually creating that validation for ourselves by making a really cool video, do a monologue, record it.
It's interesting. I think about that. So most of the social media you're seeing in your community of actors is people that are just announcing their wins.
Especially in the voiceover community, for sure.
Yep. And they also
right
in the platforms and the communities. And a lot of it, I'm just such a skeptic. They're like, oh, I'm on the verge of making 7 figures. I'm like, why would you talk about that? Why would you even put that out there? If you're doing it, good for you. That's great. But you know what? Everyone else is reading this and feeling like crap, and thinking they're not good enough. And that's the stuff that really drives me crazy. I don't agree with that. I mean, we're all about reality. Everything's reality based with us. We talk about the difficulties and talk about the reality of becoming an actor or a voice actor, because it's very, very hard, as opposed to attaching this glamour. There's a glamorous aspect added to being a voice actor, which doesn't exist. It just really doesn't exist. But Yeah, I find it so unhealthy mentally.
Mm. It makes me think about the long game and, how if, when someone, an actor, would come in my office, it's like some of those really important questions of, let's get in touch with why you're doing this and what do you love about this, and why I think acting and some of the arts are fields where if you have to do it, do it. But if you don't have to do it, go pick another career. You know what I mean? Because life will be easier that way, most likely. But if your love for it and that passion and drive is such that you feel this is what I want to do, then go for it. But keep in touch with what that feeling is, what that sense is. And I would say, if it's comedy or if it's something about voiceover, like what a wonderful thing to showcase on social media. Like, oh, I just came up with this, impression of this person,
Something
or,
original.
something to celebrate or share
Right. I think that's the
versus,
point you're making, Alyssa, right? Is to create something.
yeah.
Use it actively. Use it. It is this platform where, thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people that wouldn't ever see you, wouldn't ever see or hear your work, could. And, but it takes effort and it takes motivation and it takes that piece of like, oh no, someone didn't hand me the script and I booked a job and now I just show up and then I can just post. You have to be a
Mm-hmm.
creator. You have to have
Mm-hmm.
that drive to create. So it is a catch 22, but it's like, how can you shift that passive feeling of the world is happening to me? And then if you're in that state as an artist or an actor, I consider myself an artist just because I have albums and I'm a songwriter and I'm an actor. So, like, if I were to just use it passively and just look at what's happening to the people that are in the top 1% of their career, I would really feel worthless. But the truth
Mm-hmm.
is, I have created 2 albums and I have done this and that and the other thing. And I show up and I've done, independent projects and so on and so forth. So if I use it actively, then I have a better lens for myself.
Mm-hmm. And then keeping all of those achievements and accomplishments in your back pocket and remembering them
That's
for
important.
those times when you see, or, when the critic comes up or when you get the rejection, and thinking about, okay, what do I have to offer here? Or what do I want to share? It's such a different framework. Um, I think as a therapist, the people that are using social media effectively are really showing up and making bite-sized pieces of suggestions or help or tips that, the layperson can take away with. So that would be interesting for actors, like some kind of share.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, like, try to make it fun, which is probably the furthest thing away from, the idea of approaching social media. But if you can kind of go back inward and go back inward again, and what do I have to offer? And what am I doing? And what do I like to share with people? Because it is such an outward expression of yourself to do voiceover work or to do acting. I guess it's internal and external, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, in some ways, it could be like I have this big playground and how do I want to share? But then being, I guess, somewhat defensive on what you want to consume and noticing how you consume social media, and then noticing even what you feel and think about when you think about social media, because that's going to give you a clue to whether you should even open up Instagram or not. If you're
Right.
already like, oh God, I don't want to face
Well, I think I got
seeing.
a great idea from you guys today. I think we should make a list of our accomplishments that we are the most proud of. and have it handy, have it accessible. So when the days that you're feeling not so great, read through that list. And I'm actually going to do that.
I do. I have people put Post-its up in their bathroom or on their fridge of like, I had this accomplishment. And, it's almost like I say people, amnesia themselves. They forget. And then they go back to that bottom of the barrel place. And that is a skill I really work on with actors, because it's very hard to stay with the I don't know of why you didn't get the part.
Oh,
right?
gosh, yes.
Isn't it? The mind doesn't like, I don't know. We look to fill in the spots, but therein lies the story. And it's harder to stay with the feeling of perhaps disappointment, anxiety. Oh, how am I going to pay the bills? I didn't get another job. It must be because, and then we have our laundry list. But to stay with the, I didn't get it. I feel sad. I feel disappointed. And I don't know is a healthier place, because it's more true. It's just more true. And you're not.
Because you're not going to find out why. The majority of the time,
you're not going to find out why. There's like 1%, less than 1% that you're ever going to get feedback. But it's also just, you don't know why. And then why go to the stories?
And it's also like something I bring up with my actors too, is depersonalize it. Just because, as you know, I've been somebody who took my artistic career and then went behind the scenes and produced and wrote and casted. And like, the truth is, it has nothing to do with you. Most of the time.
Most of the time, right?
Most of the time. It actually has nothing to do with the actor themselves. It has to do with us. We're usually dealing with corporations a lot as voiceover actors. And it has to do with some note from corporate that came over, that switched gears, that there's a series of 10 things that happened between your audition and their casting pick. And so most of the time, it's like not anything personally attached to the actor themselves. It's outside circumstances.
That's
so like finding the tool to not have attachment to
it. Exactly. Right. The love for the work and the non-attachment to the outcome. This is just, this is yoga practice. It's the same. It's, putting in your all, being present, but not being attached to the improving upon the poses or getting to the next pose. And this is, a constant working with your mind.
Yeah. And
to be where you're at. Yeah.
And it's hard when you've developed a career and now financially you're dependent on the wins for actors that are in that category. But you still have to find a way to be unattached and not make it define you.
I'm curious how both of you have endured and have lasted in this field.
Oh boy, lots of drinking. No, I'm kidding. I mean, for me, I do the mental reminder of why I got into the business in the first place. And also make sure that in here, I still feel the same love and passion as I did when I started, when I get behind a microphone and I get that excitement of booking that job. But I know for me, it is about approval. I was raised, God, if you do the right thing, you're going to get approval. You're going to get love. Hell, just all right. The childhood stuff. So I know where my motivation lies. But, the days 30 years of doing this, it's just the constant reminders. I've almost quit the business twice. I've gotten to points where I wasn't booking jobs for like 6 months. And then that shifted my attitude. And I went in for an audition and I walked in and they said, "Oh, you're number 50." And I was like, okay, I don't care. And all of a sudden I wind up booking the campaign. This is after 6 months. And I had said to my husband at the time the night before, I'm quitting. I'm quitting. I'm not good enough. I'm obviously not going to get anything. And, here we go. And that campaign lasted almost 2 years. So I think it was me letting go, fully letting go and releasing that attachment. And just saying, okay, I'm just going to have to go do something else with my life. And that's okay, though. That's okay.
Do you think you showed up differently, or you auditioned differently with that non-attachment?
Yeah, I felt a great amount of intimidation when I first started in this business in front of casting directors and agents, not really realizing what the playing field is. I was always like, oh, I'm so glad I got an agent. It was just this little young thing in New York. So I would be very intimidated. And that day, though, I just said, I don't care. I'm good. I'm here. They like me. They don't like me. There's nothing I can do about it. And I was prepared to just go ahead and quit the business. So that must have been what did it. I don't know. I don't know. Or I was the last person they took and they didn't find anybody else. I don't know.
It's so interesting.
But
these things happen. There's kind of a letting go, and there's probably a way in which you showed up differently, maybe a little bit more free, maybe a little more even. Maybe they felt the openness that you had.
I guess. I don't know. But,
who knows?
Especially when you're auditioning for stuff that's going to be, lucrative, or it's a big job, to release it. And maybe you get down to the top 2 or something. That is a difficult thing to do, to say, I don't care. So I started to think from the aspect of, you know what? I'm grateful that I even got to this point. I'm grateful that they considered me good enough to be at this level. So I've kind of reduced to help me deal. That's what I have done, as opposed to just making the whole prize is winning the job. To me, that's not the whole prize.
That's great. And I think that's a great point of diversifying. I mean, I think that's just such another characteristic of actors and the hustle. It's okay, I'm going to the auditions, and then I'm doing childcare in the evenings, and then I'm, bartending on Saturday nights, and then I'm doing my study groups and having a bunch of different things. But then also, hopefully there's enough financial padding that you can appreciate the process.
Right.
And Linda, maybe because you had been in the field already for a while, or, certain things were supporting you.
Financially, I was being supported at that point.
Yeah. So we all need a certain amount of support to live. And once that's in place, and, we kind of get the right state of mind to show up for these auditions, I think paying attention to the process and starting to find some fun in it.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe that's in the goal category, but to start those breadcrumbs of oh, it's not just about the win or lose, the job or not. It's how do you show up? What's it like to wait online and maybe chat with the other actors there and feel like you're part of the group? And do you like this whole process? Because there's a whole world it's in getting the job, and that's something that you have to really dig deep to go, do I like this? Is this good for me? Can I do this?
Now, Alyssa, you've been in this business as long as I have. So how have you managed it?
For me, I I was that kid, I didn't even go to real schools. I only went to conservatory schools and all of that. So like you, Linda, I was set up that I was just going to graduate college, and I had all the awards and all the things, and I was just going to go get the lead and everything. That was what I thought. And I really, as I was explaining before, I quickly realized that if I continued in this mindset, I was actually not going to be okay. I would be like one of those stories that you read because the disappointment was so great. And I realized that I'm so grateful that I had the support to know that so early on in my career, so that my focus could become creating the feeling that I wanted. And that's why so young, I decided to become self-employed and start to create this life that had this freedom. So not only could I be making whatever financially I needed to support my life, but then I had this space and freedom to just create to create.
Mm.
I'm creating to create. You know, I've gotten involved in many independent films. I've been like, I just need to create versus it be about me being validated for being something fantastic.
Interesting.
I just needed that to be gone because the compulsion to be an artist and be me was much greater. So it was like I needed to almost take myself off the audition lines, off the rejection line, so that I actually could come to what my why. The why for me is because I really, really enjoy humanity and I love exploring the facets of humanity through storytelling, music, film, however I can. It's the greatest thing to me. So like I had to clear up stuff before I could become and still be doing this today. If I would have been functioning as who I was in my teens and 20s, I really wouldn't have made it. Meaning like really wouldn't have made it. Probably would have checked out at life altogether because the stakes were just so high.
Wow.
So it was like, and I first had to get to the right balance. You know,
that's interesting.
That's just been my journey because I would have, just like the actors that come to you, Anna, how I look, how I feel. You know, for me, it was like, well, if I want to go out for all of these ingenue film roles, I have to have long hair. But wait, I don't feel like a person with long, like all of those things. You know,
that's and beautiful. I love listening to you because it's getting back in touch with that core thing of why you came to this field and getting in touch with that. Oh, I need to create and I need to create in this really particular way, or like that's the way at this moment and let it transform into something else in the future. And it sounds like you did a lot of the different work around setting up your life so you could do that, which doesn't sound easy, but sounds really, really worthwhile. You know,
I do believe that. And it wasn't easy, but it was really worthwhile to come to a truth of yourself at every checkpoint. You know, like we were talking before, marketing, when I would create my albums, I would be in this process for years and it was the most unbelievable experience. And then we'd get to the point where I had a finished product ready to go. It's for consumption, radio, all of it. And that's where I would check out every time until I realized that, okay, I love to be where it's pure creation. I love to be in that moment. And now when we start to have to apply templates to it and we have to start talking about numbers and all of these things, I check out and I kind of dissociate from my own work. So wait, how do I solve this? Let me hire somebody that does marketing. Let me have someone else represent my project from here.
Yeah.
And like for voiceover actors, like if you get stuck at your demo, if you get stuck at your website, if then that shuts you down from all the work you've been doing as a thing, go on Fiverr. Somebody loves to do it.
Yeah.
Right. And that's one of the main things I work with people is sort of finding what are your needs and where do you need that support? They're often connected. It's like, you know, and sometimes it shows up in big feelings like anxiety or depression or some kind of compulsion. And what's really happening is it's like, oh, I'm having this chronic anxiety that is now taking over. And if we tease that away, the chronic anxiety around auditioning is really like, okay, I'm just not feeling prepared enough, or I'm too attached to achieving the job, and I'm not paying attention to the actual demo that I'm doing. So it's like, if that childhood reason of why you went in to acting to be accepted, if that sort of thing that we might not be as aware of and might not be as friendly with is the driving force, and that takes over, that's really ingredients for burnout, right? Because then it just becomes up and down. I didn't get it. Oh, I got it, but it's not enough. And I still need more love, and I'm still not good enough. So it's like how to really start to accept who we are, where we are, our gifts, particularly with actors, our quirks, which make us who we are and stand out and so special.
There's so much. There's so many like topics, nuggets of information. How could folks reach out to you, Anna?
Sure. So I have a website, annahindell.com. I'm also on social media, Anna Hindell Psychotherapy on Instagram, Anna Hindell on Facebook and LinkedIn. I'm in Manhattan. My office is on 31st and 5th. I see people virtually and in person.
Great. Yeah. The majority of our audience, I think, is virtual. So
yeah,
you offer sessions.
I sure do, virtually. Yep.
That's great. This has been wonderful. This is exactly what I was hoping. Yeah.
This has been really fun. And I just love stepping into the world of actors and voiceovers. And yeah.
So one final note, you had mentioned that we have create an anchor point within us. Can you just briefly tell me about that?
Yeah, I think of that in a very literal sense. I mean, it can be, it's kind of taking that pause, taking some breaths and feeling the weight of your body. That can be kind of like I think of it like a little scan, a washing over to just check in with what's happening for me in the present. Gotcha. And the beauty is that the present is always there. It's free. It's just a check-in, and it can kind of sharpen our minds into what's happening right now. And, sometimes, so there's that. And then another anchor can be, oh, let me get back to that reason of why I'm doing this.
Okay.
So that when those thoughts come in, I can remember I have something really fabulous to offer, or, whatever the story may be.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Anna, for joining us.
You're so welcome. This has been a treat.
Listeners. I'm sorry. I'm just saying, make that achievement list, listeners.
Yeah, I've definitely taken away a lot from here, and I'm going to be putting some of those elements in practice too. But it was an absolute pleasure. We're going to put all your information in the show notes as well. But thank you for joining us. That wraps up another episode of the Voiceover Gurus podcast. Any questions, you can always reach out to us at info@voiceover.guru. And thanks for joining us today. We'll see you soon. Fantastic. Yay.
Oh, thanks, you too. That was really...
Thanks for listening to the Voiceover Gurus podcast. Real talk about the voiceover industry. Learn more about us and get coaching at voiceover.guru.